still remember the sound of the pen hitting the table. Not dropping. Thrown. My own son slid the papers toward me like I was a stranger. Not the woman who carried him for 9 months. Just sign, Mom, he said, not even looking at my face. Everyone does this. My daughter stood by the window, arms crossed, avoiding my eyes. The lawyer cleared his throat. And that's when I realized something that made my chest tighten. They weren't asking. They were ordering. I looked down at the papers. Property transfer. My house. The one I built brick by brick with my late husband. The walls that still held his laughter. The kitchen where my kids learned to walk. You said this was for tax reasons, I whispered. My son laughed. Actually laughed. You don't need all this anymore, he said. Be realistic. Be realistic. That sentence hurt more than anything else that day. Then my daughter finally spoke. Her voice was cold. Practiced. You'll still live here, she said. We're not throwing you out. We're just putting things in our name. For safety. For their safety. I looked around the room and saw something I had never seen before. Hunger. Not for food. For ownership. That's when my son leaned forward and said the sentence that changed everything. If you don't sign today, we'll make sure you regret it. The room went quiet. My hands shook, but not from fear. From clarity. Because right then, sitting in that chair, I understood the truth. They thought I was already gone. They thought I was weak, confused, replaceable. They thought they had already won the inheritance. What they didn't know was that one sentence, just one, would end their plan forever. And I was about to say it. Before that day in the lawyer's office, I truly believed I had raised a close family. Not perfect, but loving. My husband, Ahmed, and I built our life slowly. No shortcuts, no inherited wealth. Just long days, tired nights, and a quiet belief that if we stayed honest, things would work out. He was a schoolteacher. I ran a small tailoring business from home. We saved every extra rupee. When others upgraded cars, we added bricks to our house. 1 room at a time. 1 year at a time. That house became our pride. More than that, it became our proof. Proof that patience works. We had 2 children. My son, Bilal, the elder. Smart. Confident. Always in a hurry to grow up. And my daughter, Sarah. Quiet. Observant. The kind who watched before she spoke. When Ahmed passed away suddenly from a heart attack, something broke in all of us. But we survived. At least I thought we did. For a long time, the children were supportive. Or so it seemed. They checked on me. They brought groceries. They asked how I was feeling. But slowly, their questions changed. Not, "Are you okay, Amy?" But, "Did you renew the property papers?" Not, "Do you need help?" But, "Have you thought about distributing things?" First, I laughed it off. They're just worried. I told myself. After all, people talk. Neighbors whisper. Relatives advise. Everyone has an opinion when a woman becomes a widow. Still, I trusted my children. I shouldn't have. Because behind the concern, behind the smiles, something else was growing. And I didn't see it yet. The first real change came when Bilal suggested I stop going to the bank alone. "You get tired easily now," he said, gently taking my handbag. "I'll handle it." I felt grateful. Then Sarah started insisting on organizing my documents. "Just in case," she said. "You know, emergencies." Again, I agreed. Why wouldn't I? They were my children. But soon, decisions were being made around me instead of with me. Electric bills switched to Bilal's email. Bank alerts went to Sarah's phone. Visitors were told I was resting, even when I wasn't. Once, I joked, "Am I becoming invisible?" No one laughed. Then came the comments. "This house is too big for you alone. You don't need this much land. Maintenance costs are high, Amy." Each sentence was said softly, respectfully, but together they formed a pressure I couldn't explain, like hands slowly tightening around my choices. One evening, I overheard Bilal on the phone. "Yes, once it's transferred, we'll renovate. Resale value will be great." Transferred? I asked him about it later. "Oh, nothing," he said quickly. "Just future planning." That word again. Planning. But not for me. For life after me. That night I couldn't sleep. For the first time since Ahmed died, I felt something close to fear. Not of being alone, but of being pushed aside. And deep inside, a question formed that scared me more than the answer. What if they weren't waiting for me to decide anything at all? The lawyer's appointment came without warning. Bilal called that morning. Be ready by 11. We're going somewhere important. Where? I asked. You'll see. When we arrived, my stomach dropped. A law office. Clean. Quiet. Official. Sarah was already there. So were Bilal's wife and her brother. People who had never cared about my health suddenly had time for legal meetings. That's when the papers came out. That's when the tone changed. That's when respect disappeared. They spoke over me, around me, as if I were furniture. Standard procedure. Just a formality. For everyone's benefit. And then came the threat. If you don't sign today, we'll make sure you regret it. I looked at my children, the same ones whose school fees I skipped meals for. And something inside me hardened. Because while they thought this meeting was the end, they had no idea it was only the beginning. Not for them. For me. The ride home from the lawyer's office was silent. Not the peaceful kind. The dangerous kind. Bilal drove fast, his jaw tight. Sarah stared out the window like the city had suddenly become more interesting than me. I finally spoke. I need time, I said softly. These papers, I want to understand them. Bilal exhaled sharply. Why do you always make things hard? He snapped. That word again. Hard. I felt my chest tighten. I'm not refusing, I said. I just want. You want control, he interrupted. That's the problem. Control. From the woman who had handed them everything without counting. When we reached home, Sarah followed me inside. Amy, she said, lowering her voice. You embarrassed us today. Embarrassed them. Not concerned about my fear. Not worried about my confusion. Embarrassed. She sat across from me and spoke like she was calming a child. You don't understand legal things. That's okay. But fighting us makes you look unstable. Unstable. That word stayed with me. Because once people label you that, they can take everything. That night, I cried quietly in my room. Not because of the house. Because of the realization that my children had stopped seeing me as their mother. I was now an obstacle. And obstacles are removed. The next few weeks felt strange. My house began to change. Bilal's wife started bringing relatives over without asking. They walked through rooms, measuring walls with their eyes. This could be a guest room. This wall should be broken. Natural light is good for resale. Resale. They spoke like I wasn't sitting right there. Once, I overheard Sarah say, she won't be around forever anyway. I froze. Not because of death. Because of how easily she said it. I tried to regain small pieces of control. I went to the bank alone one morning. The teller looked confused. These accounts require authorization now, she said. Your son updated the access. My hands trembled. I went to the utility office. Same answer. At home, when I asked Bilal, he shrugged. It's for convenience. Why are you overreacting? Overreacting. That was their favorite word. Any emotion I showed became proof that I was unfit. Then came the final humiliation. One afternoon, a stranger knocked on my door. He introduced himself as a property evaluator. I'm here to assess the house, he said. I stared at him. No one told me. Behind him, Bilal appeared. Oh right, he said casually. I forgot to mention. Forgot. Or didn't care. That night, I sat alone in the living room, touching the walls Ahmed and I had painted together. And for the first time, I asked myself a painful question. What if signing those papers isn't the worst thing they're planning? The answer came sooner than I expected. One evening, Bilal sat across from me with his phone in hand. We've talked, he said. If you don't cooperate, we'll have to take other steps. What steps? I asked. He hesitated, then said it. We can file for legal guardianship. Say you're not mentally fit. The room spun. Sarah didn't deny it. She nodded. It's for your own good, she said calmly. For my own good. That sentence felt like a knife, because I suddenly understood the full plan. They weren't just taking the house. They were taking my voice, my choices, my dignity, everything. That night I didn't sleep. I didn't cry either. I thought about Ahmed, about the years I stayed quiet to keep peace, about the mistake of assuming kindness would protect me. And then I remembered something they had forgotten, something that had been sitting quietly, waiting, and for the first time in weeks I smiled, because they thought they were trapping me. They had no idea I was already one step ahead. The next morning, I left the house before anyone woke up. No announcements, no explanations. For the first time in months, I didn't tell Bilal where I was going. I didn't ask Sarah for help. I wrapped my dupatta, picked up my old handbag, and walked out like I used to, alone. The air felt different that morning, lighter. I took a rickshaw to the other side of the city, to a small office above a pharmacy. The paint on the stairs was peeling. The signboard was old, but the name on it was familiar. Mr. Farouk, Ahmed's lawyer, the one my children didn't know about. When he saw me, his eyes widened. I was wondering when you'd come, he said gently. That sentence alone told me everything. I sat across from him, my hands folded tightly. They want me to sign everything away, I said. They're threatening guardianship. He nodded slowly. You're not the first parent to sit in that chair, he said. But you are prepared. Prepared. I hadn't felt that word describe me in a long time. He opened a drawer and pulled out a thin file. Your husband came to me 2 years before he passed, he said. My breath caught. He updated everything. Quietly, just like Ahmed always did important things. Mr. Farouk slid a sealed envelope across the desk. He told me to give you this only if you felt cornered. I stared at the envelope. It had my name on it, in Ahmed's handwriting. My hands trembled as I picked it up. And in that moment I understood something deeply. My children had planned for after me, but my husband had planned for me. I didn't open the letter right away. I was afraid of hope. Mr. Farouk spoke softly, explaining what Ahmed had done. The house? Still in my name. The land? Placed in a trust. Not for the children. For me. With strict instructions. No transfer without my written consent. Verified in person. No guardianship claims unless certified by 2 independent doctors chosen by the court. Not family. And the final line, the one that made my chest ache. If anyone pressures my wife for property, they forfeit their inheritance. I closed my eyes. Ahmed had seen this coming. Not the exact words, not the exact faces, but the possibility. Mr. Farouk looked at me kindly. You don't have to confront them yet, he said. But if they push again, we're ready. Ready. I left the office with the letter tucked deep inside my bag. For the first time since that lawyer's meeting, I walked taller. But I also knew something important. Knowledge is power, but silence is strategy. And I wasn't done listening. For the next 2 weeks, I did something that surprised even me. I said nothing. When Bilal talked about renovations, I nodded. When Sarah brought new papers just to review, I said I'd think about it. They mistook my calm for surrender. Their confidence grew. I overheard plans about selling half the land, about moving me into a smaller place nearby. They spoke freely now, carelessly. That's when I recorded everything. Voice notes, messages, witnesses. I visited Mr. Farouk again, quietly updating him. This is good, he said. Let them build their case against themselves. And then one evening Bilal announced it. We've booked another appointment with a lawyer, he said. This time, there will be no delays. I smiled softly. Of course, I said. I'll come. They didn't see the shift in my eyes. They didn't hear the strength in my voice. They thought the end was near. They had no idea. That meeting would be the last time they ever spoke to me like I was powerless. The second lawyer's office was larger. New furniture, glass walls, expensive silence. Bilal had chosen it himself. I could tell by the way he walked ahead of me, shoulders back, like a man who already owned everything he was about to take. Sarah sat beside him, calm, confident. Their spouses were there too. Support, backup, witnesses. I noticed one thing immediately. They had come prepared. Folders, printouts, sticky notes. I had come with only one thing, my purse. The lawyer smiled politely at me. "We're here to finalize the transfer," he said. "Finalize." Bilal pushed the papers toward me again. "Same ones, different table. This will make everything easier," he said. "No more stress." I looked at the signature line. Then I looked at my children. "Before I sign," I said, "I have one question." They exchanged glances. "Why didn't you ask me what was already arranged?" The lawyer paused. Bilal frowned. "What do you mean?" That's when I opened my purse. Slowly, carefully, and placed Ahmed's letter on the table. The room changed the moment the envelope touched the table. I turned to the lawyer. "Before we continue," I said, "please read this." The lawyer hesitated, then opened the letter. As he read, his expression shifted. Confusion, interest, concern. Then he stopped. He looked up. "This changes everything," he said. Bilal laughed nervously. "What is this?" "Some old note." The lawyer cleared his throat. "This is a legally binding will amendment," he said. "Filed 2 years ago." Sarah's face went pale. He continued reading aloud. Clause by clause. Trust ownership. Consent requirements. Forfeiture conditions. And then the sentence. The one Ahmed had written. "If any child of mine attempts to coerce, threaten, or pressure my wife regarding property, their inheritance is revoked in full." Silence. Heavy. Final. Bilal stood up. "That's not fair," he shouted. The lawyer looked at him calmly. "Fairness has nothing to do with legality," he said. I spoke then, my voice steady. "You threatened me," I said. "You tried to take my voice. That was your mistake." Sarah whispered, "You planned this." I shook my head. "No," I said. "Your father did." The lawyer leaned back in his chair. "Given what I've just heard," he said, "I cannot proceed with this transfer." Bilal's wife protested. "There must be a way." "There isn't," the lawyer replied. "And I'd advise you to stop." Sarah's hands were shaking. "Amy," she said, softer now, "we can talk about this." I looked at her, really looked, at the daughter who once held my hand crossing the street. And I felt something surprising. Peace. "This was the conversation," I said. I stood up. For the first time, no one stopped me. No one corrected me. No one spoke over me. As I walked out, I heard the lawyer say something that felt like justice. "You should also know," he told them, "any further attempts could result in legal consequences." Outside, the sun felt warm. Not heavy, not harsh, just warm. Because in one room, with one sentence, they had lost everything they thought they owned, including power over me. The house felt different when I returned that day. Not because anything had changed, but because everything had. Bilal didn't come home that night. Sarah locked herself in her room. No one demanded tea. No one discussed renovations. No one mentioned papers. The next morning, Bilal sent a message. "We need to talk." I didn't reply. For the first time, I understood something important. Silence is not weakness. Sometimes it is the strongest answer. Days passed. Then weeks. The house grew quieter, lighter. Sarah avoided my eyes. When she did speak, her tone was careful, polite, like someone speaking to a stranger with authority. Bilal stopped bringing people over. The property evaluator never returned. And slowly, painfully, the truth settled in. They hadn't lost a house. They had lost access to me. And that loss was harder to accept. The legal consequences came quietly. Mr. Farouk handled everything. A formal notice was sent. Inheritance rights suspended. Further interference prohibited. Bilal tried to argue later. He showed up one afternoon, standing in the doorway like a guest. "Amy," he said, "let's not make this ugly." "Ugly." I smiled sadly. "You already did," I replied. Sarah came next. Tears, apologies, regret, or fear. It was hard to tell. I didn't think it would go this far, she said. I nodded. That's the problem, I said. You didn't think. I didn't throw them out. I didn't raise my voice. I simply changed the rules. They could visit. They could speak. But they could not decide. The power had returned where it always belonged. With me. I still live in the same house. The same walls. The same memories. But now I walk through it differently. With my head up. With my name intact. Sometimes, late at night, I read Ahmed's letter again. Not because I need proof, but because it reminds me of something we all forget. Love is not proven by words. It is proven by respect. Money reveals character. Inheritance reveals intentions. And silence, when chosen, not forced, becomes strength. To every parent listening to my story, remember this: you are not old. You are not useless. And you are not invisible. If someone only values you for what you own, they don't deserve either. Respect matters more than money, and now they know it too.